YouTube, John here again. Like the title of this video says, are Republicans evil or are Democrats liars? Let's dissect that a little bit and talk about that, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of misinformation out there that came from our national news media, who really did not want certain things to take place. Let's talk about the tax bill. Something that is truly going to be great for the country. And let's talk about what that actually looks like. Let's talk about the misinformation out there that's stemming from that. So, according to Democrats on Capitol Hill, this new tax legislation, 4 million Americans are going to lose their health care, according to the CBO report. So let's talk about what that CBO report actually said. The CBO report did say that 4 million people will not have health care next year. It did not say 4 million people are going to lose their health care, or that 4 million people are going to have their health insurance canceled, because the new tax plan that was just passed overturns the individual mandate. So let's talk about what the individual mandate is. The individual mandate is the mandate that states that all Americans have to buy health insurance. The CBO, in the fine print down in the bottom, the cliff notes, said that they expect 4 million people to cancel their health care. Didn't say that 4 million people were going to have their health care canceled by the insurance companies, because the insurance company can't do that. Funny little thing about insurance policies: when you read an insurance policy and you sign an insurance policy, you find out that insurance policy is a contract between you and the company. That company can't just end that contract unless it's in keeping in that contract. So 4 million people plan on opting out of the system because their health care is simply too expensive. I can't blame them. I've seen a lot of health insurance plans out there on the market that are just ridiculous when you look at the price. You're looking at, of an average family of 4 having a healthcare plan that costs them $1,200 a month, and it comes with a $12,000 deductible per person on the policy. Now, it also has usually somewhere between a $16,000 to a $20,000 max out of pocket for the whole policy for the whole family. So once one family member hits $12,000, another family member, racks up another $6,000 in cost or something like that, then there's no more deductible that you have to pay. Now you just come in and they start paying, they paying for you. So, but let's think about that. You're paying $12,000 a year for a policy for the privilege of paying the first $12,000 of your own health care. So you're paying $24,000 a year in your health care if you have something catastrophic that happens. Okay, so a lot of Americans looked at that and said, look, that's more than what I pay for my house. I can't afford it. It's too much money. If I don't have a tax penalty to pay anymore, then I'm going to opt out. I'm not going to pay for it anymore. I'll take my chances. I'm a reasonably healthy individual. And somebody let the cat out of the bag that the only reason why people were getting these health plans is because they were afraid that they wouldn't get their free wellness checkup. So you're going to pay $12,000 a year on a policy so that you have the ability to get a free wellness checkup. That's a $55 cash out of pocket expense if you go to that same doctor and you say, look, I don't have insurance, but I need a wellness checkup. Cash money out the door. What's it going to cost me? $55. Some doctors are a little bit prouder. They're usually up in that $75 range. Nobody's going to charge you more than $75 cash out the door for a wellness checkup. So the idea that you need that free wellness checkup is kind of BS, especially when, if you pay cash out of pocket for the wellness checkup and you decide to go get a catastrophic plan, something that only covers broken limbs, accidents, things like that you have, especially if you have teenage boys in the house or something like that, or young boys in the house, they're going to do kind of crazy things. And then you also are making sure that you're getting coverage for the big things. What is actually 95% of the health costs in America, healthcare costs in America, 95% of the cost involved in the healthcare cost is heart attacks, strokes, cancers, your catastrophic illnesses and injuries. You go get a catastrophic illness and injury policy, it costs you $175 a month. So for $175 a month, you're covered for 95% of what is the healthcare cost in America, and the other 5% is typically your immunizations, birth controls, and things like your free wellness checkup each year. If you go to CVS Pharmacy, if you're worried about your flu shot, well, guess what? They'll give you one for free. If you're worried about your birth control and you're like, oh, all Republicans are, they're just evil because I'm not going to get my birth control and it's so expensive, go to Walmart. Walmart has a deal. If you go to Walmart, if you walk into Walmart, walk up to the pharmacy with your birth control prescription, you hand it to them and you say, I don't have health insurance, I need to pay cash. Well, Walmart's deal, $4. That's what Walmart charges for birth control outside of insurance, $4. So all of you who are paying your $1,000 a month insurance premium for the privilege of being able to pay the first usually $15 to $25 of your prescription, because that's a part of your copay. Well, guess what? That same prescription that you're paying $15 copay for will cost you $4 if you didn't have the copay or the insurance. So for everybody who says Republicans are evil because, you can't afford your birth control, it's $4. $4 a month. If you can't afford $4 a month, quit smoking pot. If you can't afford $4 a month, don't have sex. I'm just saying. But that's not what we're here to talk about. In all of these pieces, with that individual mandate being overturned, nobody's going to lose their health care. People are going to opt out of their health care, but nobody's going to lose it because you have a contract with Blue Cross Blue Shield or United or Aetna or whoever your health insurance provider is. You have a contract with them. That insurance policy is a contract. They're contractually bound to pay for certain services. You entered into that contract to pay a monthly premium so that they would pay for those goods and services. That is a contract between a consumer and a company. The simple fact that the federal government got involved and said that you were mandated to purchase that product as a consumer from that company, I take issue with. But they were able to get it passed through the Supreme Court because, hey, it's a tax. Because it's not a tax penalty. Let's not confuse that. That's another piece that was overturned, is the tax penalty. That was the number one reason why everybody went out and bought these overly expensive plans, is because they didn't want to have to pay the tax penalty. As soon as you make a product mandatory, it becomes more expensive because of supply and demand. So, let's understand what the tax penalty was. The tax penalty was not a penalty. It was called the shared responsibility tax. Now, everyone who had the Obamacare plans paid that tax as a part of their premium. It was hidden inside the premium. It was embedded. Nobody even realized this. The people who didn't have an Obamacare compliant plan, well, they had to pay that tax at the end of the year as a part of their tax filing because, hey, it wasn't embedded into the plan of their healthcare premium that they chose not to get. They decided that the tax penalty was cheaper, or that, paying that shared responsibility tax at the end of the year was cheaper than paying the $12,000 a year premium, because they weren't getting that benefit. That's the big thing. Are you getting the benefit for what it is that you're paying for? So, people were paying this tax penalty, or they were paying basically their shared responsibility tax, which was the shared responsibility of paying for the uninsured, the illegal aliens who were able to get free health care, people who were able to get free health care. That's what that shared responsibility was going for. The other thing was going for was it was going to pay the subsidy market, not the subsidy market of the folks that couldn't afford health insurance that were getting a subsidy to make their premium cheaper. It was going to fund the subsidy market for the companies to keep them profitable and solvent. You see, that was one thing that the companies knew would possibly happen, is that healthcare costs are going to skyrocket. A ton of people are instantly going to be going in and getting these health plans, and they're going to have to start covering a lot of things, a lot of pre-existing conditions that they can't charge extra for when they're doing simple risk assessments. See, car insurance companies do this all the time. They do a risk assessment based on your driving record, and they assess what is the dollar figure that they need to make off of you for the risk that you are in coming into their company. Healthcare insurance companies do the same thing. They assess risk. They look at your risk factors. They used to ask you medical questions about your medical history Does your family have a history of heart disease? That's going to increase the amount of money that they're possibly going to have to spend on you. So any private company who is not a nonprofit organization who's in business to make money is going to assess risk in their business. And if you are a higher risk in their business, you are going to pay a higher premium. If you already have a known condition, hey, I've got cancer, now I need insurance because I need somebody else to pick up the tab, well, guess what? You're going to pay a higher premium for that. It'd be no different than blowing the engine in your car and then calling up the car warranty company and saying, hey, I need a new warranty policy on my car because I just blew the engine. It's just like getting into a car accident, hitting somebody else's car, and then calling up an insurance company saying, hey, I need an insurance policy on my car because I just wrecked somebody else's car and I need you to pick up the tab. That's basically what we're doing when we're saying that insurance companies can't charge higher rates for pre-existing conditions. I understand you have a pre-existing condition, and my heart goes out to you. But what you're doing is you're asking for someone else to pick up the tab to cover you because you chose not to do it in the first place. You see, if you had health care, if you had health insurance at the time that that condition happened, that health insurance company is required to pay for that. That's why you signed a contract with them, known as your policy. They can't cancel your policy because you used it. Now what they can do is they can then go back and in the renewal portion of that policy in the following year, they can charge you a higher premium based on a new risk assessment. That is legal. I'm not going to say whether or not it's right or wrong. In the charity and the giving, in the giving season, I'm not going to go into what's right and what's wrong. I'm just simply stating this is how business works. Businesses are in business to make money. They happen to be in the business of helping you, but they're not going to do that for free. Somebody has to pay that doctor. You entered into a contract with that company to pay that doctor, and they did all the way until the end of the policy. And then when it came time to the policy to renew, all of a sudden you found out, wow, this got really expensive now that I got cancer. Well, yeah, it happens. So let's go back into how this tax bill affects things. Does this tax bill affect your ability to get insurance? No. Does it affect your ability to not get insurance? No. This tax bill simply says that you're no longer required by law to go and get insurance, especially with plans that became overly expensive because they had to cover things that they never covered before, like maternity care for men, because we have such an epidemic of men getting pregnant out there. But if we added in maternity care for men into all of the policies, everyone was able to share in that little bit of a cost for the, estimated 4.5 million illegal immigrants that come across our borders each year, and some of which are pregnant and possibly having children in the United States for free on your dime. That's where that comes from. Somewhere that cost has to be made up. So the question is are Republicans truly evil for saying that you don't have to buy health insurance anymore? Because this law does not state that you're going to lose your health care. It states that if you don't want it, you don't have to have it anymore. You don't have to participate in those programs if you don't want to. That's the only thing that it states. The only other thing that this law overturned was the subsidies for the company profits. You see, somebody in Congress who was not in the hip pocket of Blue Cross Blue Shield or United Healthcare or Aetna looked at some of those companies and realized that last year Blue Cross Blue Shield made a $1.7 billion profit. That's B with a billion. $1.7 billion profit they turned last year. They received $650 million from the federal government in subsidies to try to keep their company solvent. Which means, even without the subsidy, they still made just under 1.1 billion, $1.05 billion is what they turned in a profit last year, and yet we're still subsidizing them? No. That is ridiculous. And that is why the subsidies ended. Not the subsidies for the individual, subsidies for the company. Any company that's making $1 billion in profit each year without the federal government's help doesn't need the federal government's help. Which means we shouldn't be spending our tax dollars on it, your hard-earned tax dollars. Which brings me to the next point. Nancy Pelosi made this great and wonderful warrior-like speech on the House floor about how this tax bill is theft. Nancy Pelosi and the Democrat Party believe that the money that you earn each week in your paycheck belongs to them. It doesn't belong to you, it belongs to them. And that not giving them a larger percentage of your income is theft. It's theft from them. They believe that they truly have ownership over your money and that they allow you to keep a percentage of it. You see, Bernie Sanders, Barack Obama, and Hillary Clinton, when they were all running for president, had this belief that if you were able to make enough money in your life, that you were able to save and buy a home and possibly start a business, and that business became profitable, and you started that business and purchased that home and made these different investments so that maybe your children could have a better life than you, that when you die and you leave that business to your children, and I'm not talking about the Koch brothers or the Waltons, or the Hiltons, or even Donald Trump. I'm talking about the small business owner, the guy that owns a bicycle shop in Fresno, California, the guy that has a skateboard shop, in Atlanta, Georgia, the guy that, the woman who's out there that started a flower business, small businesses. When you look at these small businesses, these are the top 1% that Bernie Sanders is actually talking about. When you look at that business, you look at how much money does that business make per year? Does it actually turn a profit? What property does the business own? And then you put that into a business evaluation over a 15-year time frame. In 15 years, will that business turn a profit over those 15 years? What profit is it turning each year? Well, it turns about $300,000 a year in profit. Some of that stays in the business and gets reinvested back into the business. Some of it goes to the business owner in the form of a paycheck he's paying himself. He's not taking that full $300,000 and just collecting it in his house going, man, look how rich I am. He's paying himself so that the business stays profitable. If that business turns $4 million in 15 years, and that business owns property, it has inventory inside the store, and it has a building that it's inside of, well, that business is probably valued at about $5 million because of a $15 million profit evaluation. Because that's how businesses are evaluated, is on a 15-year profit. So if you do a 15-year evaluation of your business and that business is worth $5 million, well, guess what? You now qualify to pay the death tax. That's what the death tax is. And if your children, when you leave them that business, if your children cannot write that check for that death tax, they have to sell your business to be able to write that check. They just lost the business, or the family farm, or the investments that you put into compounded interest. When you go in and you start doing investing and you start finding out what compounded interest is, and you start finding out how nice compounded interest is, and how an 18-year-old can do a $20 a month investment, $20. And when he retires, he can retire with $2 million in the bank. Well, anybody else who figured that out and says, you know what, I want to invest $40 or $50 a month, because $50 a month is such an extravagant amount of money. But through compounded interest, by the time he retires and he leaves that money to his children will have to pay the death tax. So the death tax was overturned. Now, if you follow the Democrat plan, Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, Barack Obama, they wanted to raise the death tax up to 65 to 68%. But yet, you paid taxes on your income throughout your entire life. On all of the money you made, you paid taxes on that. And then you died. And somebody decided that they were then also entitled to an additional 68% of what you were able to save off of what they already taxed. Not really going to touch that one any further. I'll just let that one sink in for some of the more hard-headed folks. You see, folks, the money that you earn is yours. You earned it. It wasn't endowed by you by federal government. The rights that you have to go get a job aren't given to you by the federal government. The rights that you have to speak, like I'm doing right now, aren't given to you by the federal government. The right to defend yourself and your family and your property from life, limb, eyesight, or theft isn't given to you by the federal government. Those rights are endowed and given to you by your Creator. They are rights that you were born with. You were born with the right to speak your mind. You're born with the right to defend yourself. You're born with the right to go out and earn a living. It is the government's job to protect those rights. They are not the creators of those rights. They are supposed to be the defenders of those rights. Keep that in mind when you begin thinking how much more the federal government should be doing for you. You see, this is where we've began to go off track. This is where the country has began to go off track, when we began believing that the federal government gave us the First Amendment, or the Second Amendment, or the Third Amendment, or the Fourth Amendment, all the way up to the 10th Amendment. The federal government didn't give us these rights. These rights were already ours at birth. It is the government's job to preserve those rights and defend those rights when someone tries to take them away from us. There are a lot of people out there that believe that taxation is theft, that simply paying someone a percentage of your income for the privilege of earning that income sounds ridiculous. And it does sound ridiculous. That's why I live in Florida right now. That's why prior to living in Florida, I lived in Texas. I live in states where I don't have to pay that state for the privilege of earning a living in that state. It just never made sense to me. Now, when it comes to paying taxes to the federal government, there are some things that I do believe in paying taxes for, such as the common defense of the nation. We need a standing military. We live in an extremely volatile world. If you had been to half of the countries in the world that I've been to, you would understand how volatile this world really is and how needed our military is. I have no problem paying taxes for things like that. I do, however, have a problem for paying taxes for other things that are not necessary for the people of the United States. You know, it is not necessary for the people of the United States to have an abortion. 99% of the time. I understand there is a 0.01% of the time where an abortion is medically necessary for the life of the child, or for the life of the mother, because of the child, because giving birth to that child will cause, has a reasonable chance of causing death to the mother. I totally get that. In the case of incest and rape, I'll give you that one. I'll concede on that end of it. But pretty much from that point on, if you need an abortion, then you needed birth control, or abstinence, or a class in motherhood. Nobody needs murder. Nobody needs abortion. I'm getting a little off topic on that one. I'm gonna stop while I'm ahead on the abortion argument there. And this video is sponsored by coffee. Just a little shout out to the coach there. But, let's just kind of break that down. When you're looking at this new law, are Republicans truly evil for passing this law to lower your tax burden? Or are Democrats lying to you, saying that you didn't actually get a tax cut? That when they should have left the old system in place where you had 7 tax brackets. Now you have 4. And the first tax bracket is a 0. So you only have 3 taxable brackets. And everyone's taxes went down, except for the top 1%. Their bracket percentage went down. But all the deductions and the loopholes that they used to take advantage of, that everyone was losing their mind over for the last 30 years about closing the loopholes. All these rich people have so many loopholes, they never pay any taxes. Well, guess what? All those deductions and loopholes, they went away. Now they're actually going to start paying taxes. They're going to start paying a whole lot more than they were before. All these New York fat cats, they're going to start paying a whole lot more than they were before. Donald Trump is going to start paying a whole lot more than he was before, because guess what? Donald Trump can't write off his New York state taxes off of his federal taxes anymore. He now has to pay both. So he's actually going to pay a lot more in taxes. But the average middle class family is going to pay a whole lot less. Because when you start breaking it down, the average middle class family doesn't have the ability to itemize their deductions. Most people that are the average middle class family can't go in and itemize fully the way that a business can. So they were left to a few things: charitable contributions and the standard deduction. And the standard deduction last year was $12,000. This year, the standard deduction will be $24,000. So if you're an average middle class family that's barely making it, making only $40,000 a year, well, guess what? $24,000 is now your standard deduction. But guess what? Your charitable contributions are still there. Democrats try to tell you that they're not, that you can't write off your charitable contributions anymore. Yes, you can, except now they cap out. But they cap out a ridiculous figure. So the average family making $40,000 a year will never actually get to that cap, because that cap is higher than they make per year. So if you're able to donate $50,000 a year while making $40,000 a year, then you must be doing a lot of that Democrat math. You know, that's the way the federal government looks at it these days. Is, you know, hey, if you got more going out than you got coming in, well, you know, it's fine. Just print some more. You know, call up China. They'll give you another loan. But you know, it kind of boggles the mind when you break things down, when you break down this tax planning. You look at it in the mathematics. You don't look at it as a Democrat or Republican. You look at it as an average family. You look at it as someone who understands simple, basic math, addition and subtraction. You don't even really have to do any multiplication in the deal, unless you really want to find out what this is going to do for you on a weekly basis or even a monthly basis on your budget. But unless you're getting into it budgetarily, and you just want to break it down in the simple numbers and the basic math, tell me, are Republicans truly evil in this tax plan, or are Democrats lying to you? Because like Bernie Sanders said 4 days ago, if they win a majority in the House and the Senate, your taxes are going back up. He admitted on national television that nobody will seem to replay on MSNBS that your taxes are going back up, that they're going to have to raise taxes, not just on the wealthiest 1% of the country, on everyone. Everyone's taxes will have to increase. They will try to minimize how much they increase taxes on the middle class, but everyone's taxes are going up. He said it, not me. Don't shoot the messenger. So understand what this tax bill is actually doing. Go in and read it. Find out for yourself. Understand what it's actually doing. Understand why it was actually written. Now, are there still loopholes and crap in there and a bunch of pork that probably didn't need to be in there? Absolutely. Why? Because Congress is full of a bunch of lawmakers. That's their technical job, right? Lawmakers. Almost every single congressman and senator that's there are lawyers in their past. They write laws that they can use and abuse. This is why Congress exempts themselves from so many things. This is why Congress is deathly scared of guys like Governor Greg Abbott, who have gone out there and started a movement called the Article 5 Convention of States, because Governor Greg Abbott wants to pass a constitutional amendment that Congress will never pass. He wants to pass an amendment that says Congress shall be bound to all laws that are passed by Congress, which means when they do retarded, stupid things like the Affordable Care Act, and then they exempt themselves from the Affordable Care Act, they won't be able to exempt themselves anymore. When they have laws on the books, such as insider trading laws on the stock market, they won't be able to exempt themselves from insider trading. Why do you think so many senators and congressmen are multimillionaires today when they only make $150,000 to $170,000 a year? 4 years into making $150,000 a year job, they're worth $220 million. Why is that? Well, because they know that the laws they pass will affect the stock market. They know what stocks to buy and sell based on what they're doing and how that's going to affect the market. Who's going to get government contracts? They're the ones who make these decisions, and they heavily invest in these companies. And it's legal to do so because they exempted themselves from insider trading. Understand that. Gain a little bit of understanding. Like a very well-respected guy in Georgia typically says at the beginning of his videos, I'll throw it in at the end of this one just in case anybody has made it this far. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Do your research. Know what you're talking about before you start talking about it. Look into things. Understand the big picture. Don't look at it through the eyes of Democrat versus Republican. Don't look at that little D or that little R behind someone's name when you read their speech. Simply read what they're saying. Read it in context. Don't just read a little clip or a little piece. Don't just get a little 15-second clip of a 45-minute speech. Watch the whole speech. Understand the context of what's being said. Understand that sometimes people actually say jokes to keep a crowd entertained. And if you only read the punchline of that joke, you may truly believe that this guy is a bigoted racist. And they may not be. It may have actually just been a simple, clean joke. So with that, I will leave you. This video has run a lot longer than I thought it would be. It's run about 30 minutes and I needed to take a 30-minute break. So, y'all be good. And until next time, I'm out.